Welcome to this episode of The People Dividend. I'm your host, Mike Horn, and I am absolutely delighted to have in our virtual studio today Yosi Amram, who is a distinguished psychologist, an executive coach who caters to chief executive officers, entrepreneurs, and other influential leaders, and a pioneer researcher in the field of spiritual intelligence. I know probably most of you in the audience are familiar with EI, emotional intelligence. You may know the work of others in that field, but this is spiritual intelligence. So it's different, and I don't know if that does it a service or disservice, Yosi, by calling it SI, but we'll talk about that. Yosi Amram, Dr. Yosi Amram holds an MBA from Harvard University, a PhD from Sophia University in clinical transpersonal psychology, and he is committed to enabling individuals to unlock their potential through spiritual intelligence, which is a profound connection to the core of one's existence. It's their spirit, where inspiration and the deepest interconnectedness resides, that enriches our overall functioning, improves our effectiveness, and enhances our well-being. Dr. Amram has worked with more than 100 CEOs, serving as a trusted advisor and mentor for those leaders who work for a broad spectrum of businesses. Additionally, he serves as a psychologist working with individuals, couples, and groups. He's the author of Spiritually Intelligent Leadership: How to Inspire by Being Inspired. And who couldn't use that in today's world? It offers a compelling roadmap that equips leaders with the means to connect the true source of their authentic power and presence deep within themselves. By utilizing Dr. Amram's modern integrative methods and spiritual and practical applications, I hope that everyone in our listening audience finds in this the capacity to transform leadership, to build, manage, and inspire high-performing teams. So welcome, Yosi. I'm so glad that you're here. Why don't you say a few words about yourself to our audience?
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, you did a pretty good job describing all my credentials. I'm honored. I will just say a couple other things. My journey into leadership and interest started actually in the military, in the Israeli military of all places, which is right now a problematic part of our world. But fortunately, I was in in a peaceful time, and I had one of the fastest promotion records and the fastest in the history of my regiment. I won lots of awards, and but something about the command and control model of the military chafed at my soul, which is what inspired me originally and motivated me to try someday to build an organization based on different set of principles that were more humane. And while the command and control is effective in battle, you don't have time to pull people into a conference room and do some whiteboarding and consensus building. Um, it doesn't really work in the knowledge-based economy, and doesn't work in motivating and inspiring and getting people that are need to be creative and collaborative and inventive in their work. So
I wouldn't necessarily think of of a member of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, as writing a book on spiritually intelligent leadership when I think about a brave warrior. So can you just start by helping me and our audience understand what is spiritually intelligent leadership, and how does it differ from other forms of intelligence like emotional intelligence?
okay, great. Yeah, no, what got me into this thing of spiritual intelligence and leadership is just a couple other things to rewind. I was a founder and CEO of two companies that I was fortunate and blessed enough to take public. So I had my chance to actually try some of the things, and that was at the time where I knew about emotional intelligence and all the research that was done about its contribution to leadership and well-being. And I had a profound, disturbing, traumatic, beautiful experience, if I can throw all those things, which was a spiritual awakening, but it was very disorienting and it led me to being pushed out of my company. But it was a spiritual awakening. I won't go into much to it right now. but it got me interested in this. What was it? Was it real? Was there something here real? I was experiencing oneness. I was experiencing myself as part of the greater whole. And I was then that's what got me back to school to do a PhD to understand what had happened to me, and was this real? Was it delusional, and so on. And so I was interested in spirituality, I was interested in leadership, and I knew about emotional intelligence. Then I heard the term spiritual intelligence. I thought, oh, that would be a great parallel to what emotional intelligence is. So, okay, long intro, but what is spiritual intelligence? Well, it's very parallel to emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? Essentially, it's the ability to draw on emotional resources and information to help regulate, manage our own emotions, and influence others' emotions. So, by analogy, spiritual intelligence is the ability to draw on spiritual resources and embody qualities that have been hailed by all the world's spiritual traditions in daily life to enhance functioning and well-being. So you might say, what are these qualities, quote unquote, spiritual qualities? And these would be things like purpose and service and gratitude and compassion and humility and integrity and so on. Presence, higher self. So these are qualities that have been hailed by all the world's traditions, wisdom traditions, and ancient traditions, regardless of their theology, cosmology, and metaphysics. So I did research interviewing 71 teachers, people that were nominated by their peers to those that walk the talk, that embody these qualities in their daily life. And I found that those people had a common understanding of these qualities, regardless of whether they believe in Muhammad or Jesus or the Buddha or nobody. They're just whatever it was, their cosmology. But these are virtues that have been understood by humanity for millennia. Now, the good news is that modern positive psychology that has looked into similar qualities such as hope and compassion and service has shown that people that embody these qualities are happier and do better. And similarly, in the field of leadership development, there's now good understanding that these same qualities of being servant leader, being a good listener, being a compassionate leader, living with integrity, with humility, actually impacts to good leadership. A study by Bain Company, one of the top consulting firms in the world, management strategy consulting with Fortune 100, Global 100 companies, working with 2,000 companies, have found that inspired employees are twice as productive as people that are just doing their jobs. And they identified 33 qualities that lead to inspiring leadership. And what were those qualities? It was servanthood, humility, presence, centeredness, empathy, listening ability, compassion, and so on. Most of those qualities match very closely to the qualities that came out in my research around spiritually intelligent leadership. So, what is spiritually intelligent leadership? As I was trying to define first, what is spiritual intelligence? And spiritually intelligent leadership is the ability to embody and bring these qualities into our being, into how we conduct ourselves and the kind of teams that we build. So, there are 7 dimensions of spiritually intelligent leadership around mobilizing meaning, around interacting with grace, around being inner directed, around presence, around higher self, around truth, being motivated based on truth rather than ego, and so on. So, there are those 7 domains, and then they break down into 25 individual competencies that support those domains. So, for example, in the domain of meaning, one is its purpose, 2, it's service, 3, it's vision, and 4, it's reframing difficulties into opportunities. So all of those support deeper and greater meaning, where people then align around that sense of meaning, that sense of purpose, which then builds a community. Community is another dimension of spiritually intelligent leadership, and so on. So
It's amazing. And your work really emphasizes the importance of being inspired to inspire others. In fact, the subtitle of Spiritually Intelligent Leadership is How to Inspire by Being Inspired. Do you have a personal story or a moment or an illustration about when this principle transformed your approach to leadership? This
Well, I
principle of
think
being inspired to inspire others.
I wouldn't say it's just one moment, but I think there's many moments. I mean, we can't really lead others until we lead ourselves. We can't inspire others unless we are inspired. So what tends to inspire us? Like I remember when I started my first company called Individual Inc., which was the first company that did personalized interactive newspapers before the internet and so on. It was on fax machine. I won't go into all the stories. That eventually I
That's
took it
cool.
public, but you'd get Mike's daily newspaper on your fax machine, and you would rate the articles as relevant or not. And we had machine learning software that would adjust your profile and then pluck the articles that were more and more relevant to you over time. But anyway, when I first had that idea, because I was one of those people that were overwhelmed by all the trade journals and magazines that would land in my inbox once a week or once a month, like Computer World and PC Magazine and so on. I don't know if you remember, some of the audience members may be too young to remember the days where we would get these trade journals and newspapers, and it was outdated information. It was very hard to cull through what was relevant to you. So when I first had this idea, I knew about desktop publishing and fax and new machine learning software and news wires, and it kind of all clicked. And I had this idea and I had that vision, and I was like, okay, we need to empower people with uniquely relevant information that's relevant to them, that would help them do their job better. It could also apply to their personal life, so you could get the articles and things that interest you. So that was an inspiring moment for me. And then that idea, that vision kind of lit me up. And then I went around and talked to people about it, and other people that resonated with that idea got inspired. So, we get inspired when we get some vision, some sense of purpose. We connect to some power or some energy, and then we become enthusiastic and we vibrate that energy, and we vibrate at a higher frequency, and then people get drawn to that, and that it ignites a resonant frequency in them if they match. It's like you take two instruments and they resonate at similar frequency. You pluck one, the other one starts to vibrate, and you put a bunch of them together, then you get shared intention, and there's a multiplicative effect of the power and the energy. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's so
yeah.
amazing. And for all of the listeners, if you didn't listen to last week's episode with Dr. Steven Stein on emotional intelligence and emotional intelligence for dummies, I'd encourage you to go back to the prior episode of the People Dividend and listen to that. It's so interesting how we really have a different lexicon here, a different language. And one of the things, Yosi Amram, that I'd like to explore with you is that in spiritually intelligent leadership, you talk a lot about about the role of meaning,
Uh-huh.
about grace,
Uh-huh.
about presence,
Uh-huh.
truth, and wisdom in leadership. Uh, it's it's an agenda I love because it's certainly near and dear to my heart as a humanistic management practitioner. But I always struggle, and what I'm writing about now is how do leaders cultivate these qualities within themselves? Grace, presence, truth, wisdom, meaning. How do we cultivate all that?
Well, it's a lifelong journey. Let me first say that. So it's not like, oh, you read my book and you're like, okay, now I'm enlightened. Great. I wish that was the case. That would be a great commercial, but that's not how it works. How do you cultivate emotional intelligence? How do you become, a world-class athlete? You practice in the gym, on the track, or whatever, in the field, day in and day out. So it's about building new habits. And how do you build habits incrementally? And there are all these books now, Atomic Habits, etc., that are gaining popularity, bestsellers, etc. So it's setting small goals and then working on them. So in this thing of spiritually intelligent leadership, as I mentioned there, you mentioned these domains of meaning and grace and truth and so on. And under those, there are different qualities of spiritual
I
intelligence.
see.
And then each of those, I would say, you could pick my book, you could do whatever, but you pick one quality and then you work on it for a week or a month. You do the exercises, you build practices around it, and then it becomes a habit. And then you can move to the next thing. And you still have to do your if you're working on gratitude, let's just say, you're going to still you build a habit of doing a gratitude practice every day before you go to sleep or when you wake up or whenever it's convenient. And once you've built that habit around gratitude, and it starts to rewire how you perceive reality, and you're going around your day at work and you look for moments to appreciate people and be grateful for, that becomes a habit. It's an orientation. And then you say, okay, now I need to work on something else. I want to bring greater joy to my life. Okay, how do I bring joy? So let me find out how I could be more playful, more joyful, more joking around in meetings, etc. And then you see so you work on joy, and then you become more joyful and playful at work. And then you say, okay, I want to work on, presence and intention. So I'm going to start practicing meditation. I'm going to become mindful. I'm going to sense my breath, my feet, my legs as I'm talking to you right now. And all of a sudden I'm more grounded. Okay. And I see your smile, and I'm more present to myself, and I'm more present to you, and I'm more connected both to myself and to you and to this greater space we're in. I'm in my room. I don't know where you are in your studio. We're over the ether, over the cosmos, but I'm more present to all of that. And then my awareness and my consciousness expand. So I'm just saying, there's so many dimensions and nobody masters them all. Neither do I. There's no limit to our capacity to develop in all these dimensions. But it's like anything. You start small and you build on it, you build habits and so on.
One of the, at least as I understand it, having gone through spiritually intelligent leadership, how to inspire by being inspired once, is that one of the key aspects is this alignment with one's inner values. And how do you suggest that leaders achieve this alignment amidst all the pressure they've had? And you have certainly faced pressure in your life, whether as a warrior, as a CEO, as a clinical psychologist. I mean, how do we get to this alignment given all the pressure that we have?
Yeah, no, great question. So, one of the things my clients always get kind of frustrated with me in the beginning of our working relations, they bring a problem and we're working. And one of the first things I say is sense yourself, sense your body, what's happening in you. What are you feeling emotionally? What are the sensation? What's the energy? How's your chest? Is it open? Is it closed? Is your breath flowing smoothly, or is it tightening, and so on? So, alignment means, and to live in integrity, we have to be in contact with our essence, with our spirit, because when we're not aligned, then we're divided. And that means we lose our power. So when we're out of integrity with ourselves, with our spirit, with our core values, we're actually weakened. We're pulling in different directions. Different parts of us are pulled in different directions. So we have to be in touch with ourselves first and foremost. And then we start to be in touch with, when we say things, do we feel more open? Do we feel more closed? Do we feel more grounded? There's a resonance of truth, and we start to feel, is this, truthful or not? When we speak truth, we know it at some part of us, and when we say something that's not true, um, there's tightness, and our breath
Mm.
stops. Like right now, I don't know, you can, well, I'm doing something silly experiment with you if you're willing. I don't know what color the wall in front of you or next to you is, but
White.
okay, it's white. So just look at it and just as an experiment, say the wall is red.
The wall is red.
Okay, what happened to your breath at the bottom of that?
Yes, I noticed that my pace of speech was a little faster, that I had a sense of what is that? A sense of disbelief, a
Mhm.
gap in the breath.
There was a gap in the breath. From what I could tell here, and I'm, just looking over the
Yeah,
the video, it's like your breath kind of stopped for a second. There was a
yes, a
moment of
gap. Yeah,
tighten. There was a
right.
gap. And yeah, so if we pay attention when we say something that's not true, now you look at the same wall and say that the wall is white and see how that feels.
The wall is white, perfect, normal,
Yeah, it
no
just kind of
gap.
flows naturally and
Right,
your breath
right.
flows and your body's not tightening up. Okay, this is a simple experiment. I think anybody listening to this can do this on their own now. But the point is, if we start to pay attention to our body, to our breath, to how our chest feels, how our heart feels, when we speak the truth, our body responds. Our body is like a truth meter. It knows at the subconscious level whether something is true or not. Now, sometimes it's hard to discern the truth, and we're kind of trying different things, and there's complicated things. And I'm just doing the silliest exercise around the color of the wall, but I'm just trying to illustrate a principle, which is to start to pay attention to our physiology, our psyche, and there's lots of clues. And the more attuned we are to ourselves when we speak truth, there's an alignment, there's a flow, there's a grounding, there's a sense of spaciousness. And when we're out of alignment, there's something in us that tightens up, that feels like, I don't know,
Yeah,
so.
it's so amazing. My last book was Integrity by Design,
Uh-huh.
Working and Living Authentically. And I think about the concept of integrity as congruence. When you ask people to describe integrity, they talk about um, everything hangs together well. I mean, that's how an engineer might describe it.
Uh-huh.
Out of other traditions, people might say it's of whole cloth, but it's when words and actions, and even better, when thoughts, words, and actions align, it creates
And
some
emotions.
congruency. Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
all of that, and makes people, at least in part, able to act in an authentic manner,
Uh-huh.
not to act in an authentic, but to behave authentically. And, I'm doing research for today's podcast episode with you, Yosi Amram. I looked at some other podcasts you've been on: Deep Leadership, the Remarkable Podcast. And what's been the response from the business community on spiritually intelligent leadership? You work with CEOs and others in the C-suite, just as I do. I mean, what's the response?
Well, I mean, some people, when they hear the word spiritual and business, they're like, okay, this is woo woo, and they turn away. But some people are like, wow, this is interesting. I know about emotional intelligence, and now there's good research. I mean, there's my research now has been cited by over 1,000 academic studies. And, in my research, working with 42 CEOs and 210 members of their staff, I showed that leaders that had greater spiritual intelligence led teams with greater commitment, higher morale, and lower turnover. And since then, people took the measure of spiritual intelligence I developed. And by the way, on my own research, I controlled for other factors like emotional intelligence and personality. What I found is that emotional intelligence contributed to leadership effectiveness. It explained about 41% of the variance. I'm getting a little nerdy here, but it means it's about 40% of the quality of leadership is attributed to emotional intelligence.
Nothing to sneeze at.
Nothing to me is significant, but 46% was attributed to spiritual intelligence. So also somewhat bigger. And combined, they explained 67% of leadership effectiveness. So the point is they're slightly correlated, or moderate, small to moderate correlation, but they each contribute, and they contribute, in a multiplicative way. So they are differentiated. They each have a unique contribution. Now, other studies have actually looked at a harder set of outcomes, which is the financial performance of a business unit. And they administered spiritual intelligence measure and an emotional intelligence measure to the leader. And then they looked at a bunch of business units and a thing and found that spiritual intelligence contributed to the financial outcome of the business unit. And in fact, the self reported measure of spiritual intelligence contributed to the financial outcome as measured objectively by the company. I think that's pretty amazing. They also use the same thing, and this is not to knock emotional intelligence, but this is a little bit of my ego, so to speak, kind of popping its head. But when they did the same thing with one of the top research measures of emotional intelligence, which is the Baron measure of emotional intelligence, there was no effect on the financial performance. So, I mean, again, emotional intelligence is clearly important, but I'm just saying, here's an example of a bottom line impact. Now, in another study with banks, they found that banks, when they surveyed the employees, the average level of spiritual intelligence among employees, not necessarily the leaders. And what they found is that the banks that had a higher level of spiritual intelligence among their employees had a better ROI on their assets compared to the ones that had lower spiritual intelligence. All I'm trying to say is that now there's a good body of research that says this isn't just woo. This has tremendous bottom line impact. And so you ask me, how is the business community related to? Well, it depends. I mean, some people say this is woo, but when they dig in, and it's like, okay, here's the data. You're like a hard-minded business person. Okay, here's a hard-minded results. You can't dispute it. I mean, this is good quality research that, and
Well,
by
let's
many
think about.
researchers.
Yeah, for sure. Let's think about these success stories, Dr. Amaran. And in fostering these spiritually intelligent environments, what are some of the challenges that leaders face, and how do they transcend those challenges?
Well, it's all the same challenges that you might expect. One is ego.
Uh
We
huh.
all have ego, and instead of motivating based on truth or a vision, we're trying to build ourselves, our self-image, whatever. And we all have egos. Human beings have egos. As the Dalai Lama said, you can't kill, or neither is it desirable to kill your ego. But you know, instead of having a deserving ego, have a serving ego. So so the challenge is to transcend the ego, to see it, to become more transparent to it, and like say, oh, here's my ego, huh? Funny. Thank you, ego. You're trying
Yeah.
to help me feel good about myself, but I'm not going to follow your dictates. There's a higher calling, and my purpose is more important than just self-aggrandizement. The other challenge is obviously the pressures that we face in terms of short term versus the long term. So we're always tempted to cut corners and like, okay, I'll just, yeah, it doesn't feel, it's not 100% integrity, but it's a little white lie, or I'm just going to cut this corner here, and so on and so forth. And we pay the price in how we feel about ourselves and how the quality of the relationships, people feel it. So there's many pressures. Practicing spiritually intelligent leadership is not so easy. That's why I'm saying it's a lifelong journey. But the beauty of it is that we feel better about ourselves. We feel more inspired. We're more energized. There's more alignment within us. And there's more beauty and more joy and more compassion and more connectedness and more community. And it pays off for the business in the long run. So, I hope I'm
Yeah, I
answering you.
often I often find that when I speak on the topic of designing with integrity, how to bring this congruence to an authentic life, and to bringing more of who you are to what you do, people will sometimes ask me, "Well, is it okay to lie?" I go, "Don't ask me that. I mean, that's a question for someone else." But I think the evidence is clear: is that when leaders lie, when they don't tell the truth, um, then trust erodes, it diminishes,
Uh-huh.
and it's very difficult to regain. And if people don't think that you're trustworthy, they won't think you have integrity. If they don't think you have integrity, they won't think of you as being trustworthy.
They're not
And
going to
that is
follow you.
Yeah, and that's really what underlies or underscores most authentic leadership is this element of trust, which is difficult for many to experience. So I'm so curious, though, about your elaboration on this concept of inspiring by being inspired. So I'm a leader, I'm a manager. How do I implement that in my daily, my day to day management style?
Well, you have to have a sense of purpose about
Uh
who
huh.
and what you are. Life has given each of us a unique set of gifts, talents, superpowers, gifts, however you want to talk about it. And the greatest fulfillment is when we actualize those gifts in service of something bigger. And that tends to be the most rewarding thing. And, there's research that shows, you can take people and half of them win the lottery, they get $20, and the other half don't. And then you take the people who won the $20 and you randomly divide them into people you ask them to go spend that $20 on others versus the people that are told go spend it on yourself. Now, everybody that wins the $20 for a moment feels better. They have a moment of happiness. But when they look at the end of the day, the people who spent that $20 on others have a higher, elevated, sustained well being compared to those who spent it on themselves. So when we're gifted something, and $20 is just an example, but when we're gifted something from life and we spend it to help others and to contribute, there's a sustained sense of well-being. So that becomes our purpose. So we need to find out what is our purpose, what are our gifts, how can we use them to contribute, and that's at the personal level. And then we want to align our sense of purpose with the organizational purpose, and then we have an alignment, and then we feel like we belong, and we have a sense of community. So I mean, I'm just taking one example of one core piece of leadership and meaningful life. Like you said, we're looking for meaning. One of the first chapter is about meaning.
Mm.
We're meaning making creatures. We're not just hedonistic creatures. Freud thought that we're motivated just by pleasure, and then future psychology, um, you know,
Jung came around.
Jung came around, but even before Jung, there was Adler who thought,
Adler,
okay, we're
right.
about power. It's
Sure.
not just pleasure. And then there was this whole field of object relations that said, no, we are motivated by connections, and this is the whole field of attachment theory and secure attachment and how it plays out in relationships and etc. And then Jung came along and brought into the spiritual dimension, and then positive
Yes.
psychology came along and said it's not just about pathology in the past, but there are these qualities and virtues that we want to cultivate. And then transpersonal psychology came along and said, oh, you can't really address the deepest aspects of the existential angst that humanity faces around death and meaninglessness, etc., without including a spiritual orientation. So, all of that to say is that we are meaning making creatures, and we're not. You could be on the hedonistic, you know. What you call it, trap, and just keep them, but it's not satisfying. And in the long
Yeah.
run, we need to find deeper meaning, and that's what gives us the resilience to go through tough times. And so, that's why I love and been always inspired by Viktor Frankl, his
Mm.
book Man's Search for Meaning, and that those who found meaning in the concentration camps in the middle of the Holocaust survived better than others. So
Yeah.
we can always find meaning in the midst of the suffering, in the horror, and it all is grist for the meal for elevating us. And
Yeah, I want to support your points. I recently read a story and saw the video of a social experiment where the instructor drops balloons, and each balloon has the student's name inside of it. And the balloons drop, and the students are asked to pop the balloon and find their name. So, as you might expect, uh, maybe less than half of the people find their names in this search. And then what the instructor did is she conducted the experiment again. The balloons drop, people burst them, but this time the instruction is find the name of someone else that you know and give it to them. And the success rate was extraordinary
Uh-huh.
because it was this act of probably identifying with another. And when my clients are often faced with a difficult decision or they face some challenge, I often say, the choices are to choose self interest or to be of service.
Uh-huh.
And where do you want to go here?
Yeah.
What will prove the results? So, two more questions really is that one is around providing guidance for aspiring leaders,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
people who are on their leadership journey, who want to incorporate a spiritual intelligence into their leadership but don't know where to start. Of course, a great place to start would be to, read your book, Spiritually Intelligent Leadership, to visit you at yosiamram.net or on YouTube at uh, Awakening
Awaken.
Spiritual Intelligence. And those would be great places to start. But what what could you provide in this podcast to our listeners, our human resources leaders, our scientists and engineers who listen? If they're an aspiring leader, they want to incorporate spiritual intelligence. Where should they start?
Well, you mentioned some of these places, but as I said earlier, one place is to look at these qualities and say, okay, where do I want to start? Which quality? And do I want to start on with gratitude? Pick one quality that you want to cultivate, be it gratitude, be it joy, be it purpose, be it, you know, humility. Well, humility is super hard. Don't go there first. It's probably the hardest. It's the most humbling to try and be humble. Um, so, but anyway, pick a quality and really focus on that and do exercises, do practices. The other thing is find a mentor or a coach or a therapist or a spiritual teacher, because I think we need someone who knows the territory, who's traveled through it and can support us. We need support. And then related to that is join a sangha. If you really want to develop your spiritual intelligence, join, Thich Nhat Hanh said the sangha is the new Buddha. So, we're social animals. And if we, and that's why in weight watching, there's weight watchers, and people go into groups and teams and get support around losing weight. Or in the 12-step program for dealing with addiction, there's the 12-step program, and people are in groups and get support. So, if you're motivated to develop your spiritual intelligence, to become a spiritually intelligent leader, find a resonant group of individuals that you could be in community with. Somebody just came to one of my webinars, and I was pleasantly surprised. She liked my book, and she said, "Oh, I formed a reading group around it, and a bunch of people that are interested." And then we're doing practices and discussions, whether it's my book or anybody else's. My point is that it's great to have a community, just like in business, in the organization. One of the things is we want to form communities that are aligned around the company's purpose and mission and values. Find a community of people that you're aligned with that are interested in growing spiritually or psychologically, healing. The other thing is work on your traumas. I mean, we are all traumatized, for better or worse. I mean, there's individual trauma, what happened to us in our family of origin, sexual things, there's bullying. I mean, there's so much trauma. And then there's collective trauma around race and the environment and all the stuff. There's multi-generational trauma. So I think one of the things that disturbs the flow of our life force and our spirit is trauma, which is held in the body. So there's so much work and research and books now around, resolving trauma. So spiritual intelligence and spirituality and therapy and trauma and all of that kind of overlap as a Venn diagram. And I think so. Becoming spiritually intelligent is not just about meditating or whatever spiritual practice you do. I think there are other tools coming at it psychologically, coming at it through the body, and so on is also important to open the channel so that our life force can flow, so our spirit can flow. I mean, what do leaders do? They inspire, right? I mean, that I remember one of my first business school classes at Harvard many years ago was managers and leaders, are they the same or different? By this classical professor, Abraham Zeleznik, who was a
I'm
psychoanalyst.
sure.
And the point was that managers make decisions to allocate scarce resources. Leaders inspire. What is the root of the word inspire? Is from spirit, which means the life animating force, the breath of life from Latin. So, if to be inspired, to inspire others, our life force needs to flow freely through us and through the organization. And so there are energetic practices that you could do, like yoga and qigong and tai chi, all of which kind of open up our vessels so we can become a clearer channel for the life force to flow us through us and through our spirit to express itself, its potential and its vibrancy and its power and its beauty and its radiance. So I'm throwing a lot of things. I'm
Yeah,
saying there are a
no, no,
lot of
no, a lot of
tools.
places. Yeah, that's
A lot
great.
of
One of the, I'll direct our audience again too, that particularly on this topic of organizational trauma, to go back and listen to episode 3 of this season's podcast with Lee Cordell, who's a specialist in organizational trauma. And, given how many have trauma, this isn't left at home. This is brought into organizations, and she delivers her expertise on understanding organizational trauma. So, fascinating topic to think about. And thank you for all the great places to start to think about becoming or uh, developing your spiritually intelligent leadership. So, I have one last question, Yosi, which is, as we look towards the future, here we are. As our listeners tune into this, there'll be about a half year left in 2024. But thinking beyond that, how do you see the concepts of spiritually intelligent leadership evolving? And where do they go from all the pioneering work that you've done?
Well, hopefully, my hope is that in the next 10, 20 years, spiritual intelligence will be in our zeitgeist, in our culture, much like emotional intelligence is. Emotional intelligence, the first paper was published by two academicians, Solovey and Meyer, in 1990. And then it got popularized by Daniel Goleman, who wrote a beautiful book on it in 95. And since then, there's been a lot of research and it got into the mainstream. So, it took 30 years, so to speak, from the original work, the academic work, till it got popularized with more academic work and more research and so on. And that all built a critical mass. But until then, there was a dichotomy between reason and emotion. If you were a hiring manager and you were interviewing someone, you did reference calls and about someone, and you were told, "Oh, so and so is very emotional," you would say, "Oh my God, I'm not sure I want this drama." Emotional meant like, someone who's
It was a bad word.
dysregulated is a bad word. Yeah. But if they say, "Oh, so and so is emotionally intelligent," so, "Oh my God, great. I want them on my team," right? So we have bridged the gap between emotion and reason. Nowadays, there is a similar gap between the practical and the spiritual. Spiritual is woo woo. I don't know. You believe in alien intelligence, angels, afterlife, reincarnation, a deity, I don't know, whatever it is. But it's like, show me the money, show me something tangible. It all sounds woo-woo, right? But spiritual intelligence is saying, no, 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 no. Come on. We're not talking about spiritual as an experience or as a belief system, but we're talking about the embodiment of values that have now been validated in the fields of positive psychology and leadership, things like integrity and purpose and meaning and gratitude and compassion, to be very helpful in daily life. So my hope is that in 10, 20 years, spiritual intelligence is broadly understood as a valuable concept in our daily life, at home, at work, and everything else.
Well, it's been such a delight and such an honor to have Yosi Amram, this distinguished psychologist, executive coach, and a pioneer researcher in the field of spiritual intelligence on this episode of the People Dividend podcast. Yosi, thank you for helping me and our audience understand and explore some of the nuances of spiritually intelligent leadership, um, and giving us some insight into how we can apply these principles in our personal and professional lives. It's been so rewarding to be in conversation with you today, and want to thank you very much. So until the next episode of the People Dividend, everyone stay well.